Welcome back. Trying to stand out among a crowded field to become the GOP nominee is a tough prospect, but former House Speaker Newt Gingrich says it may not even matter. The GOP race is already decided, and the nominee is Donald Trump.
Well, I think it's clear, if you watch the debate, that none of them are in the same ability as Trump. My view is that the debates should be over. Trump is clearly going to be the nominee.
North Dakota Governor and presidential candidate Doug Burgum joins us now. Governor, it's great to have you with us. Thank you so much for being here. We watched you in the debate last week. It was a bit of a crowded stage. Not everybody got to make the points they wanted to. A lot of people admitted that things you were saying had a lot of merit. They wanted to hear more, but there wasn't enough time. So paint a picture for us. What's your path forward?
Well, Jackie, Brian, Lydia, great to be on with all of you, but I just have to respectfully disagree with Newt. I mean, all of you know the history of political campaigns. You know how volatile they are. You know how things can change in an instant. I mean, people thought the New York Jets were going to win the Super Bowl till 4 snaps into the season. So maybe Newt thinks that we should just cancel the NFL playoffs and the Super Bowl because he already figured out who's going to win next January or February. But Americans love a race. They love competition. Competition's good for the Republican Party and good for the American people. And so, you know, we're the least well-known of any people on stage. That's understood. But in states like Iowa, New Hampshire, I'm ahead of other people that are on the stage, and we've only been at this 3 months. We know that we've got a message about the economy, energy, and national security that's resonating. And when you talk about the debate, when I've created more jobs than the rest of the candidates on the stage combined, when I've been making payroll since my mid-20s for every 2 weeks my entire life, and when the experience that I've got in the tech business, when we know that technology is changing every job, every company, every industry, it needs to change how we deliver government services. It's absolutely changing our military. And so I don't get a tech question. I don't get an economy question. And then they start talking about energy, and they ask people that have never led an energy state or worked in energy, and North Dakota produces more energy than most OPEC nations. So, of course, we fight for every minute we had to insert ourselves in, but we've got the experience, the knowledge, and the capability to improve every American life, bring out the best of America, and we've got to turn around Joe Biden's policies on economy, energy, and national security 180 degrees in the wrong direction he's going. We've got the solutions. We're doing them right now. North Dakota's GDP is the highest of any Republican-led state in the nation. We're doing that through innovation, not regulation. We're cutting red tape, and we've cut budgets. This thing in Washington, D.C., they can't get it done. In North Dakota, we cut 27% out of our state general fund the first 4 months I was in office. And then now this past year, the largest tax cut in the history of the state, and we passed 51 red tape reduction bills this spring. So we know how to get it. We know how to get it done. And on the border, instead of talking about what we're going to do in 2 years, we've got troops from North Dakota on the border right now, fighting transnational criminal organizations, flying helicopter missions from San Diego to the Gulf Coast. So we've got what it takes to lead this country forward.
Governor, can I ask you a question? I thought your best time on the stage in the last debate was when you talked about health care. And you said the problem is government has moved in and made it worse. We're at a point, though, where Obamacare is basically entrenched, and it looks like we are headlong down the path of more and more government health care. If you became president, what would you do to change health care fundamentally in America? Because it just doesn't look possible to me.
Well, we've got a big opportunity going forward, and some of that has got to actually, again, change the federal intervention. Whether it's Obamacare, raising costs nationwide by like 130%, that wasn't the cost-saving solution. I would just say, if any solution came to me and said, hey, this is an idea to reduce healthcare, the first question you have to ask is, does it increase the productivity of our doctors and nurses? The fact that we jammed $1 trillion of subsidy and healthcare spending into healthcare IT and made our doctors and nurses less productive is one of the reasons why federal involvement lowers productivity. It doesn't increase productivity. You were just talking about it before I came on with the federal student loans. incredibly bad policy, which raised the cost of higher education, buried people in debt, and didn't solve any problems, didn't give us better graduates or more graduates. It's just when the federal government. So I'm a big believer in the 10th Amendment. We got to return the power to the states. We got to reduce the size of the federal government, and the federal government has got to get out of these, whether it's healthcare or higher education, or now we're going to subsidize a certain kind of automobile, which leads to the disaster thing. I mean, it just doesn't work.
Right.
Governor Burgum, picking up on that last point, talking about the subsidizing of a certain kind of automobile, you're talking about electric vehicles there. We got to mention we're on day 17 of the auto strikes right now. We're seeing the unions becoming more emboldened across the country. And we have a report out today, economic losses from just the auto worker strike alone, reaching almost $4 billion. As president, Governor, what would you do about the strike?
Well, first of all, I don't think the strike would even be happening if I was president, because this is lay this at Joe Biden's feet. I mean, his energy policies of trying to artificially drive demand, subsidize batteries, subsidize people buying expensive cars, subsidizing those car companies. Of course, the workers want a chunk of that. And then also all of his other inflationary policies, including trying to kill the U.S. energy industry, drives up the cost for union, non-union workers, Republican, independent. Everybody's paying more, too much for the food on the table, too much for price at the pump. Of course, and this could be a wave of people demanding higher wages across the country, trying to keep up with Joe Biden's inflation. He's got us in a downward spiral economically, and this is at his feet because it's his policies that have put us in this position.
Governor, I just have 10 seconds. I think you'd make a great energy secretary. Would you ever consider that?
Well, I tell you, people think I'd make a great ag secretary. They think I'd make a great Department of Interior. People said I'd be great at commerce. Anyway, when I've led companies as a CEO and chairman my whole life, and as governor of North Dakota, nobody ever thought that I should be the energy secretary of North Dakota. They said, wow, that guy's a fantastic leader. He knows how to build teams. I will have an amazing energy secretary. I've already had 10 people say, can I be your energy secretary? So no, I'm running for president. But thank you, Brian.
That sounds like a yes to me, actually. Governor, we got to leave it there. Thanks so much. Always good to see.
I'm running for president. I'm not selling a book. I'm not running for a cabinet spot.
I hear you.
What I do is I build high-performing teams, and that's what our country needs right now.
You could use that very much so. Thanks, Governor. Good to see you.